Welcome to another episode of Don't Call It Small. I'm your host, Natasha Foreman. If you don't know me and you have no clue what this podcast is all about, let me share a bit. I'm a lead management consultant at Foreman & Associates, LLC, where we provide consulting and professional development services. And Don't Call It Small is where we talk all things business, share tips and news that you can use, and highlight the people and ideas behind the products and services that we buy. To learn more about our team, please visit foremanllc.com. That's FOREMANLLC.com.
Hey everyone, it's Natasha here. Ooh, ooh. Thanks for joining me today. Hey now, episode 75. My goodness. We're going to be talking about a tough topic, but one that I'm going to let you know now. It's going to be light. We're not going to be in gloomy droomy, but we're going to be looking at how we go about rebuilding after divorce, death, and other devastation. And it's really near and dear to my heart. I want to start off with a quote. And it's from Norman Cousin. It says, "Death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss is what dies inside us while we live." Yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the foundational truths that we can stand on as we rebuild our lives after what I will call the 3Ds. I've experienced all three. And the last two, I will admit I've experienced them more times than I can count at the moment. I don't even think I would even try to count. I wouldn't even try to sit back and count. But I can definitely say that I can speak this language fluently. We'll just say that. I am fluent in all three of those. And I do want to clarify that with the exception of the drive-through wedding that, led to buyer's remorse soon after and a quickie divorce, any marriage of length that leads to divorce goes through all or most of the stages of grief that we experience when we're, grieving death. It is a death, and you can either allow yourself or a part of you to die with it, or you can be rebirthed and you can see the lessons and blessings and what the future holds. So there were some lessons and there were blessings during your marriage. And although it did not end maybe how you intended, from there you can take those lessons and those blessings and then be able to embrace what is coming ahead for you in the future. And I wanted to say that, oftentimes when we're dealing with grief and we're dealing with crisis, we want answers, we want solutions, we want a quick fix. And that's something that a lot of people struggle with when they go, for, counseling and therapy, is they want that person to fix them. And that's not what the process is. There's not a fast track, there's not a microwave response to what we're going through. And so with this episode, I'm not going to sit back and be like, here we go, these are the steps you got to take, and when you're done, you'll be healed, healthy, whole, and complete, and whoop de whoop, and just buy 2 bottles for $29.99. Like, this is not what this is about at all. This is not signing up for a class. It's none of that. This is about being true to self and all of the inner workings and the layers of what we are as human beings. So to be able to rebuild, you got to first peel back those layers. And you have to first acknowledge that you are grieving. Right? You have to first admit it. You got to acknowledge it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through the steps and the stages of grief. So we can see what we're really actually up against, what we're really dealing with, what we're really experiencing, because I truly believe that just like me, there are some of you that are in absolute denial about the stages of grief that you're in. And you've probably been in denial for years. The first step and the first stage, however you want to look at it, is, guess what? Denial. Oh, shocker, right? Denial looks like avoidance. You're staying super busy, you're procrastinating, you're thinking and saying, I'm fine, I'm okay. No, it's fine. Everything's fine. I'm okay. It's all good. That's sound familiar? It's being forgetful, easily distracted. It can feel like shock, confusion, numbness, and shutting down. And I will share that through and after my divorce, and the numerous deaths of loved ones, and the devastations I faced financially, socially, having all of my possessions stolen from storage units, over the years, just compounded chaos. The denial phase never seems like denial, but it is, because you're trying to avoid staring the facts and truths square on, and you make yourself so busy that it sends the message to onlookers as though you're unfazed, as though, wow, just look at her, look at him. They're just shaking that off like that doesn't seem normal for a person who just faced that tragedy. And that's why when we see people that don't react the way we would expect them to a traumatic experience, the first thing we think of is that somehow they played a role in it, right? Their significant other collapsed, and well, what did they do? Because they weren't showing outward signs of grief. Well, because guess what? They're in denial. How many people have been arrested for that? Like, think about the number of arrests of people because they did not express, convey, demonstrate, make onlookers, make people that were looking at them believe that they were feeling the pain that they're saying that they're feeling. Yeah. Denial. And when you're in this super busy kind of this you're like a robot, you're not fine, you're not okay, you're in shock, you're numb, you are mentally, emotionally shutting down, and you don't even realize it. You don't realize it. And it is imperative that we consider all of these things. There's a quote from Joseph Campbell that says, "We must be willing to let go of the life we've planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us." That's difficult to wrap your mind around when you've been clobbered by life, and or something that's happened in life, I should say, and you're stuck in that moment. You're stuck in that event, and it's hard to let that go so that you can move forward, because the reality is that there's a life waiting for you. There's moments and memories waiting for you. And you have to let go of what was, what happened. When we struggle with this, we can get to that second stage, which is anger. And it shows up like cynicism and pessimism, sarcasm, irritability, aggressiveness, passive aggressiveness, arguing and fighting, increased alcohol or drug use, yes, even prescription drugs. It feels like you're out of control. You feel embarrassed and resentful, impatient, frustrated, and at times filled with a rage you just can't even articulate. And I apologize to anyone and everyone who encountered me during this phase at any time of my life where I've gone through this stage of grief. I can recall the physical pain and inflammation in my body and how I was taking anti-inflammatories daily. I never drank alcohol before my dad passed in 2001, but I started drinking that week. And I can remember it like it was yesterday. It was a blended fruity drink called a pink panty. I don't know if any of you remember those. It had like pink lemonade and strawberries and whipped cream. And never in my 20 years of drinking, never have I passed out or had hangovers or drank myself into a stupor or became an alcoholic or any of those things. And it's no judgment towards anyone that has. I'm just giving you a visual of my journey. But I did cross a line when, for me, it was my line crossing when I found myself drinking alone. And I felt for me that was an uh-oh. So I made the choice to stop in 2008. And the only time I would drink alcohol is, if I happen to be on vacation and there's one of those little fruity drinks with an umbrella and I'd have one or two. I'd have the occasional glass of wine. But nothing close to that era from 2001 to 2008, those 7 years. Guess when I found myself drinking more than the 1 to 2 glasses of wine every blue moon? For 13 long months after my divorce. 13 months. And during that period, I was hopscotching between denial and anger. My patience was thin and my temper was fire hot, and it didn't help that I had family and friends passing away during this period, which sent waves of grief that I couldn't process. And during these 13 months, I cut a number of people out of my life. I put a lot of people in different categories. I said, okay, I may not be able to cut you out fully, but I will isolate you from having a close enough space in my heart. There's a quote from J.K. Rowling that says, "And so rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life." Now, I'm not saying that in any of these phases that it was a rock bottom for me. I've experienced some tragedies that for a lot of people they would consider that their rock bottom. I've experienced some things in my life that people have told me they would not be able to survive. They just would have given up. But I will say that every trauma, every devastating event that I have endured has formed solid foundation for me to rebuild. Not easy, not fast, painful. Yeah. And the thing is this, when you get to the third stage, which is bargaining, what you find is that you're comparing yourself. To yourself, to your past self. You're comparing yourself to others. You're ruminating on the past. You're obsessed about the what ifs of the future. You're worried and overthinking, and you're teetering into or completely submerged into a realm of perfectionism. And there's tons of self-judgment and judging others and predictions of the future. And you're only thinking of worst case scenarios, and that shoulda, woulda, coulda keeps kicking in. That if only I, if only they, If only it. And all of this feels like insecurity times 100. There's fear, anxiety, shame, guilt, blame, and it's all slamming together and avalanching upon you. And social media is your worst enemy when you're going through the bargaining phase. Dr. Laura Schlesinger said, don't spend too much time beating on a wall, hoping it will transform into a door. When I experienced all of these emotional, what in the world is happening, energy flows during grieving the death of a loved one, I noticed that I struggled concentrating and following through. I'd space out, like daydreaming. I was non-committal and indecisive. When my dad passed, my company shut down. I had a company that I shut down. I couldn't run it. I went and worked for another company. I just didn't have the bandwidth. And I will admit that the bargaining stage clobbered me. Even post-divorce. Clobbered me. Yeah. It was intense. And I was overthinking and seeing myself as a failure. I saw divorce as failing. I saw divorce as failing before I was married. So, when I made the choice to get married, I was in my 30s. It was to marry for life, not to marry for divorce. And because I had equated divorce with failing, and many people make this mistake, it hits you in a whole new way. And especially when you're going through bargaining and denial and anger kind of at the same time. Yeah, when they're all kind of like hodgepodged in there. Because you want everyone to believe that you're okay, and you keep telling yourself you're okay. And you're okay. I'm numb. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Man. It's intense. There's a quote from Jennifer Lopez in her HBO documentary, Dance Again, where she talks about her divorce with Mark Anthony. And she said, quote, "There's no pain or failure like going through a divorce," end quote. I would say that perspective is everything. It's everything. My business suffered for years in this particular phase. And whatever traumatic experience you've gone through, you may feel like there's nothing else more devastating, that there's no other level of pain or sense of failure than that, because that for you is the zenith, the whatever, right? The ultimate. Which leads me to the fourth stage. And as I said, these stages could happen at the same time, different times. But the stage of depression, which is, it's interesting, it's a stage, it's a phase. But sheesh, isn't it dang near the umbrella under which all of these phases fall under? I'm not a mental health professional, so I'll just stay in my lane and share what is listed, what is utilized, the tool, and the signs of depression. I'll focus on that. Crying, sleep and appetite changes, reduced energy, social interest in reduced motivation, and increased alcohol and or drug use, right? We see that pop back in to the scene. You can feel despair and helpless and sad and hopeless, disappointed and overwhelmed. As I mentioned earlier, that these stages aren't, it's not like they go one after the next to the next. They're rarely linear. Heck, I went through depression while going through the other stages. And to be honest, using this list, I was fighting depression before I got a divorce. I was depressed before my dad had passed in 2001. Matter of fact, I had been crying and venting to an ex-boyfriend days earlier, and he told me I had no reason to stress and be depressed. And all was well in my world. And the day my dad passed, and I called him to let him know, I yelled into the phone and I says, "Does today qualify? Now am I allowed to be stressed and depressed? Does this meet your standards?" I can't say what else I said to him that day, because children and religious folk are listening to this podcast. Just know he agreed with me. he said, yeah, this qualifies. I was divorced in 2017, but a lot of people don't know that for years before, I was dealing with a lot of grief and struggling with health problems and health scares and hospitalizations and overwhelming stress from my doctoral program. And people I love just wouldn't stop passing away. Like, goodness. And for several years, it felt like some twisted script. And I remember crying out, "Can I please have a break from the deaths? Please, can people stop dying? Can the people I love stop dying?" It wasn't like one every 10 years. It was a handful in 1 year, a few more the next year. It was intense. And I was finding myself insecure professionally, and I wanted a child but didn't have one. And so of course I became everybody's auntie year after year. Then there was health problems that came, fluctuating weight, and no doctor could figure it out, far, near. No one could figure out what's wrong. I did always feel better though once I started getting acupuncture treatments. So I will say that Western medicine wasn't doing nothing for me, but Eastern medicine was. And the thing is about depression is it makes you feel helpless. It's like band-aids that are constantly being ripped off repeatedly, and you're overwhelmed, and the lack of control, you basically you don't have control in it, but it's magnified. The understanding, the realization of this control that you don't have is magnified by like 1,000, and you feel like you're in the Twilight Zone with Jigsaw from the movie Saw. You know Jigsaw? Now put Jigsaw in the Twilight Zone. and more from 2017 through 2021, I pulled further and further away from people. I was self-isolating. And so while y'all were freaking out in 2020 about stay-at-home orders, I was saying, welcome to my world. And then in 2021, I started to look at myself non-judgmentally, without emotion, just logic. And I was examining this phenomenon and this cycle of spiraling I was experiencing. And I didn't realize how much the compounded grief that went back to 1995 was killing me. I kept getting stuck in depression. And then with the next devastating blow, I would cycle back to the beginning, all while the previous traumas were stewing me in depression. I was getting baked in, stewed in, like some gumbo. I never fully healed from the earlier traumas. I never fully healed from domestic violence, from losing a baby, my father, other family members, friends. I hadn't gotten to or fully immersed in the final stage, which is acceptance. Acceptance looks like practicing mindful behaviors, engaging with reality as it is, being present in the moment, being able to be vulnerable and tolerate emotions, and non-defensive, assertive yet non-aggressive. It's honest communication. It's being able to say with confidence, this is how it is right now. Where you can adapt to change and respond skillfully, not reactionary. And in this stage, in the stage of acceptance, there's wisdom and pride, the positive kind of pride. There's self-compassion and validation, and there's courage. And you can know, think, and feel like you, life, and your surroundings are good enough. You feel it at your core. You feel it in the belly. And this is where I am now. I've been here before, but this time I'm aware of what I didn't know before. I didn't used to always be aware that I was at this stage of acceptance. I'm no longer fighting or avoiding reality. And with that, with this full embrace, I'm sleeping better. I'm getting the proper amount of sleep because, before, I was oversleeping. I had been doing that for years. Where I am in this level of acceptance, anxious thoughts aren't my focus of attention. I acknowledge them, and then I speak truth to the thought. I see the anxious thought. I see what's trying to take shape and grow into something. I acknowledge it, and then I speak truth to it. I don't beat myself up for it. I don't start to, and analyze it. No, I just speak truth to it. Acceptance doesn't mean you don't experience trauma and have highs and lows and distress. You're not laying down and taking an L. It means understanding your opponent, what you're fighting, and standing in your conviction to fight. Acceptance means self-awareness and environmental awareness. It's being present and mindful of each moment. It means not getting stuck in the other stages or getting unstuck when you do get stuck. That's acceptance. That's something I struggled with, and I had to be cognizant that there are traps out there, but not be judgmental if I step in, fall in, or get tossed into one. It's being able to identify what you're feeling, experiencing, distinguishing reality from unreality, and talking yourself through it until you have the clarity to see things as they truly are. It's asking myself the questions that a great therapist or counselor would pose to get you to be present enough to examine a situation without the steroided emotions that are consuming you, so that you can answer with truth and not just facts. Because we have a lot of facts, don't we? But what's our truth? Alexandra Vassiliou, I'm sorry, Alexandra, if I butchered your last name. She's the author of Blooming. And she said, if you want to heal your heart's wounds, start healing your thoughts. We are energy. Thoughts are energy. When you're going through grief, and whether the grief is tied to health or health issues kick in because of or tied to or grief, it's like you're being sandwiched. Last year I had a major family crisis that forced me so far and wide out of my reality into a new one. And there were times I almost broke all the way down. There was times I did not think I was strong enough to endure. What did and what has increasingly saved me last year and prior years was tapping into, embracing, and submerging myself into the spiritual realm. I know that kind of sounds like some fairies and wizards, but that's not what I mean. Last year pushed me up to a level I had never imagined, all while life was trying to drag me to the depths of hell. It truly felt like a battle for my soul, and I had never been so isolated and lonely while at the same time feeling secure in a presence much bigger and stronger than I can ever be. And people think I'm joking, or they just don't take it seriously when I say that my blog, breakingbreadwithnatasha.com, has been my spiritual journey since 2008. Literally. Every day you read, or now you can listen to those messages, those have been my journey. It's my journey. It's my daily walk, and I'm sharing it with all of you. People don't necessarily, they think, oh. And, and I guess because of how I share it, and this is something that I know that some of my, the readers have said, based on, that's the way I share those messages. Is the reason I have people that are reading and like I said, now listening to it all over the world. And it's people of all different backgrounds and faiths. There's even some folks that have no spiritual faith. Like, I have folks that are agnostic, and I have folks that are atheists that follow. And they said it's the way I share it. I'm like, wow. It has been my journey, my authentic walk that I share without shame, blame, guilt, oversharing. I'm just being me, and I'm just sharing with a segment of the population that share this moment with me, that I can be vulnerable with. And it's this vulnerability that led me to write my Seek Him books. 3 books with 3 workbooks covering 12 months of discovery and peeling back the layers to reveal truth and declare and embrace our identity and stand in affirmation of never going back. Going back is denial, it's bargaining and depression. And some things I've learned is that you need time and space to grieve and a safe place to be vulnerable in your grief. If you want to know more about my Seek Him books, just visit domelifepublishing.com. When I think about having that safe place to grieve, I realized I never actually had that. I always was in the position of suck it up and keep it moving, but not realizing I'm a living, breathing tornado causing disruption along the way. I didn't have the finances to disconnect for several weeks or months and be by myself and just go through what I needed to go through. And many of you don't either. So what do? Plan B. Bring the resources to you. Shake off the doubting energy that tries to convince you not to seek and stay actively engaged in counseling, therapy, and other mental and spiritual health interventions. I experienced more breakthroughs when I could speak to a non-invested outsider about all of the pain, anger, hurt, and trauma I was experiencing. And the thing is that when we tie in our careers, when we tie in the businesses that we manage, that we own, we operate, that we are leaders of, I had to really look at me and what I was doing to save my business from me, to save Foreman and Associates from me. I had to start stormproofing it, doing major realignments, restructuring and redefining, and I focused on what I could manage and handle and conceive. And ideally, you aren't faced with trauma while juggling as many pins as I've been torturing myself with over the years. And that's where the trap of perfectionism and comparing yourself to others and comparing yourself to your previous success and wins, it pops up in the bargaining phase. And when you start dropping those pins and balls, shame kicks in and anger and blame start pop locking and backspinning on you. And then 3, 2, 1, spiraling emotions turn into tornado time. And everyone, get out of the way. And this is why health and wellness are so vital in the workplace, not just as topics and PR hashtags, but embedded in the culture, essence, and way of a company. When you're getting clobbered and you're struggling with coping, you should be able to take a mental health break of 2 to 7 days without having to gobble up sick leave or any other time-oriented, pay-oriented mechanism. Having to be on for everyone means risking being off for yourself. Always being the strong friend, the fixer, is exhausting. So I am learning how much love there is in the word no. I'm not willing to sacrifice my health for other people's gain. Been doing it, not doing it anymore. So I say no in as many different ways as it can be translated. I love you. I'm fond of you. I like you. But no, no, thank you. I'm good. I don't have the bandwidth. No. Wish I could, but I can't. You see all those different ways? There's love there. In your career, that means identifying those things that serve true purpose and bring value and focus on those and pivot away from the rest. It's about intentionality. Investing where you're being invested in positively. That leads me to social media. Limiting your exposure, limiting my exposure to this trap. We talk about in episode 68, fighting the comparison trap. When you're stressed, you're fighting grief, depression, anxiety. Social media sites can drag you to the core of hell. For every good vibe, you receive 10 bites, 10 chunks out of your rear end. Oh yeah, and don't spend so much time watching the news. That's a trap too. There's so much anger and hostility bubbling up like a soda bottle. Someone that has shaken and it's waiting to unleash. You guys, we have to take breaks. In 2020, I took off the entire summer. And now I limit my exposure to 15, 30 minutes daily. And that's as much chaos and buffoonery that I can tolerate now. I realize that I have a lower tolerance for social media, for news. And what I'm also realizing is with personal interactions, you, we have to choose wisely who we spend time around. Here's what I know. And I have plenty of experience with, whether it is death, divorce, or any other devastating events that take place. People will smother you for about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. And then they go back to their lives and then they tell you how awful that they feel, that you're grieving. It's been weeks. It's been months. It's been years. You're still grieving. Oh, it just hurts that you're grieving still. It happened how long ago? And you're still grieving. And that's if you're admitting to the grief. As if you're admitting to the pain and the trauma. If you are in denial for those months or years. Listen to episode 68 where I share some examples of the ludicrous things I witnessed and heard after my divorce, for instance. There's some other examples, but that right there, yeah, that was a doozy. So with that, it's really stressing to hang around people who pour more positive in you than they withdraw from you. If you feel exhausted while you're with them and after you leave them or they leave you, limit how much time you spend with them. You don't need energy drainers. You don't need little vampires and leeches when you're trying to heal, recover, and rebuild. So with that, you have to know who to share private details with. And I can tell you now, 9 times out of 10, it's not someone at work. Most likely it's not. Listen to episode 74 about sharing and oversharing in the workplace. And here's some things to think about. Do you have friends and family members that welcome you to come over, disconnect, unwind, and relax? And they're not being nosy. They're not trying to gossip, trying to stir up your emotions. If so, go to them. Those are the ones that you need to gravitate towards. And I have a friend who I was trying to avoid because I was so drained by other people being two-faced and gossipy or projecting their fears of having my life as their reality. Yes, folks do that when you go through a divorce, death, or other major life catastrophe. You lose your home and see people tell you how that is one of their biggest nightmares and they don't know how they would survive. You don't know how many times I muttered under my breath, you better be glad I'm not the kind of person that pushes someone down a flight of stairs. Your crisis makes people feel vulnerable, and they don't have the tact and upbringing not to share with you all of the ways it would slowly kill them to experience what you're experiencing. Anyway, back to the friend I was avoiding most of 2021. She and I finally spoke towards the end of the year in 7 hours on the phone. Long, long, long overdue. She not only poured into me positively, I left the conversation full, and she did too. And she told me I could visit any of her homes whenever I want, and she has them set up as smart homes. She said I just need to tell her when. And even if she wasn't in town, she would give me remote access, and she just wanted me to have a safe space to disconnect from the world and reconnect with me. But I understand that's not always our reality, and it may not be your reality, right? So here's a free getaway that I experience 4 to 5 days a week. I go to the park for a few hours. I went this morning. I take in the scenery, the sounds, the smell of grass, leaves, and flowers. Being in nature helps to resettle me. And I found this quote from Daily Dose. It says, "Healing does not mean the damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls our lives." I don't want to be a slave to the damage. This isn't a race. It's not a marathon. It's certainly not a sprint. This is not a journey. And I was initially going to say it was a journey, but it's not a journey because it's lifelong for as long as you trek this planet. So don't try to microwave your healing. You'll find yourself spending much longer in denial and anger and bargaining. When Chris Martin was interviewed by the Sunday Times in 2016 about processing his divorce from Gwyneth Paltrow, he said, quote, "You can come at it very aggressively and blame and blame and blame, or you can put yourself in the garage, so to speak. Take yourself apart and clean off the bits, reassemble." Whether you're trying to heal and recover and rebuild from abuse, bankruptcy, losing your home, financial theft, death, or divorce, we can choose how to process this new information. The present reality that has slammed into us like a wrecking ball. We can. We have all those capabilities. Oprah Winfrey said in her Golden Globes acceptance speech, "I've interviewed and portrayed people who've withstood some of the ugliest things life can throw at you, but the one quality all of them seem to share is an ability to maintain hope for a brighter morning, even during our darkest nights." Hope. Hope is one of the foundational stones I stand on that has helped me through adversity. I've never lost hope, even when feeling helpless and feeling filled with shame. I always believe that better is coming after the terror has run amok. I've experienced cruelty I wouldn't wish on an enemy, and I don't even have any enemies. Well, none known to me. They can remain hidden and silent, thank you, but but seriously, I've experienced some things I don't think anyone deserves experiencing. And even though those moments were horrific, through those moments, I didn't lose hope. And that's why to the outside world, so many people looking, they see, oh, they have me in this box and it's this squeaky clean. And that's only because I never gave up, and I don't give up, and I refuse to give up. And I also didn't run my mouth to a bunch of folks. I have found that, especially in this social media age, a lot of the same people who spend the bulk of their time on social media tend to have a lower threshold for keeping your private matters private. And all of that reposting has conditioned them to reshare your business. And it's true because they're quick to gossip to you about someone else. And if they'll tell you someone else's business, they will tell others yours. And they were most likely already like this before social media made its debut, but now their antics are ramped up and magnified. So And this is even for folks that are like, oh, I'm not on social media. If they're quick to gossip about other people, they're going to gossip about you. So be mindful of that. Choose wisely who you spend time with and what you share with them. And I hope that you found this candid moment to be helpful. We will, of course, revisit this and go into some of the layers and bring some mental health professionals into the conversation to really address what's going on inside of us and the energy that is so hard for us to wrangle and to manage, right? We want to control everything, and some things you gotta let free. Just let it be. So let's pivot our focus. And let's shout out some pretty cool people and businesses. First up, I'm excited. Oh, so excited. Shamima Abdul Shakur from Dubai. She's in Dubai. She is a food and product photographer and a food stylist. You have to see her work on Instagram. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. Visit her Instagram page at my_pinch of wow. My_pinch of wow. You can DM her for inquiries on Instagram. Amazing. Number 2, this is a great group. I really enjoy organizations that you can see that they pour into their team and their team pours, like they're pouring into each other. Allie Payne and Julie Bird, Chicago area real estate agents. They are located in Evanston, Illinois. They run the Compass Real Estate group along with team members Kelly McCoy, Terrence Doby, Emma Bird, Tina Nelson, Catherine Mudd, and Natasha Katz. You guys have to read their individual profiles of each of the team members, how they highlight them. Awesome group. Their address is 814 Dempster, and their website is compass with 2 S's, evanston.com, and their other one is iloveevanston.com. Check them out on Instagram at Allie with 2 L's, ALLIE, and Julie Team. They're awesome. And if you are looking for real estate in the Chicago area, I hope that you will consider their team. Up next, number 3, we've got Rosie. I don't know Rosie's last name. Rosie doesn't have a website yet. We're going to send positive vibes that Rosie's going to be able to have a website in 2022. If somebody, we got some resources. I'm going to try to connect Rosie with some resources that I've shared through this podcast so that Rosie can have a website. She's a Latina entrepreneur, and she is driving We Are Creative. We AR Creative. She does custom design tumblers, cell phone cases, and more. She can bling out anything. I mean, if you could see the things that she has blinged out, whatever you can imagine she can create. You have to, currently, you have to just DM her or send her an email to order. Like I said, we're going to send positive vibes that she's going to have a website up in 2022. Deposits are required for Rosie to get started on your project. Check out her work on Instagram at We Are Creative, we_AR_creative. You can also go to beacons.ai/we_AR_creative and see her work there. I'm telling you now, when you check out her work, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, and you're going to lose track of time because she's that good. She's that good. Oh my gosh. So you guys know what that means. It's that time to go our separate ways. I want to leave you with a quote. And of course, if you guys have any questions or suggestions, please email them to us at don'tcallismallbiz@gmail.com. And you can also go to foremanllc.com/podcast, and there's a form where you can share topic suggestions or anything else. Here's the quote from Tori DaCosta. Note to self: healing is not an overnight process. It takes time. Sometimes you'll feel like you're finally over something and happy again, and the wound will reopen. Don't give up. Don't get discouraged. Take each day one step at a time. Just try to be in a better place mentally and emotionally than you were yesterday. I love it. Thank you so much, Tori, for that. Moment by moment, day by day. We can do this, folks. I love you all. I truly do. I can't wait to see you guys here next week. Whoop, whoop. For our next episode. Episode 76, we're going to be looking at the pros and cons of hiring and working for family. Did I just give you a sneak look into it? I sure did.
With that, be sure to check us out on Facebook at Foreman and Associates and on Instagram and Twitter at Foreman LLC. Our podcast Twitter handle is It Ain't Small, and our Instagram is Don't Call It Small. Be sure to also follow us and share us with your friends, colleagues, and family. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Natasha L. Foreman. Reach out to me, say hello, share your story. I look forward to meeting you. I want to make sure that I give proper credit for our show theme song. It's called Higher Up, and it's by Shane Ivers. Thank you for tuning in to the Don't Call It Small Business Podcast, for sharing these episodes with others, and for your continued support. And don't forget what I tell you on each and every episode. Don't call what you're planning, thinking, dreaming, or doing little or small. Go big, go bold, or go nowhere. I'll see you here next week. Make today a super awesome day. Take care.